Joining me now to talk about this is the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Regina, Don Bolen. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
I'm sure you've spoken to the chief, you've spoken to the community. You were well aware, I'm sure, that they believed that there were graves there, that this has long been talked about in the community. How does the discovery of them change things for you in terms of how the church has to respond?
Right. Well, yes, from the first time I visited there, Chief Cadmus told me that there were large numbers of unmarked graves, that there were adults, some that they unmarked graves where they knew who was there, others obviously children from the residential school, others possibly settler population. But I think the number of 751 caught everybody by surprise, and raises so many questions. And of course, Chief Cadmus, when he's talking about the past, he points to the cemetery and says the truth is there. So it speaks to us in a profound and dramatic way about the legacy of residential schools and the abuse that took place there, the removal from families, the deprivation of parents, of language, of culture, of spirituality. It awakens all of that in a very direct and immediate way and calls for action.
I want to start by getting your reaction to the announcement from the Oblates of Mary Immaculate that they will disclose all records related to the schools. You have said that you don't have much in terms of inside the Archdiocese. From what you understand, are they going to give everything that they have, including vital personnel records that would indicate who was there at the time that the residential school was run?
I did have a chance to speak to the Oblate Provincial this week, and they certainly want to assist. I mean, it's obviously our desire to help and to honor the request of Cowessists to know as much as possible about who's buried there, who died there, how many children from the residential school died, and how. We want them to have those answers and to be able to engage with that traumatic moment of the past. And we as church need to do that as well, right? So my understanding is that the Oblates are trying very hard to cooperate as much as they're able, right? One of the missing pieces here is going through the Oblates. It's not so much personnel files, which I believe have been handed over, but private diaries of members of the Oblates, to go through those, which I take it are voluminous, and look for traces of any information about the schools.
You and many others have been trying to facilitate an apology from the Pope. The Prime Minister on Friday said that apology not only needs to happen, but needs to happen on Canadian soil. I wonder, Archbishop, how difficult is it for you to understand that the church that you represent and you belong to and believe in still can't get their head around the need for that apology?
I got my head around it fairly early. So I think by hearing directly from Indigenous people, by hearing how much it would mean to them for the Pope to come and apologize, for the paternal role that the Pope has for the church, they understand that in Indigenous categories, right? And when there's a conflict between Indigenous families, I was told it's important that the fathers are engaged in the reconciliation process. So I think the delegation to Rome is a powerful next step, where First Nations and Inuit and Métis leaders, elders and knowledge keepers, survivors and youth are going to be able to speak to the Pope directly, for him to hear, to be able to engage, and to be able to respond. And we'll see where that goes from there.
That has happened before, that First Nations leaders have gone to the Vatican, spoken to the Pope, and made the plea for an apology, and it went nowhere. I wonder what you think is different this time.
It's very different. I've spoken to the people who were engaged in the 2009 visit. Yeah. Chief Willie Littlechild speaks about it in the TRC final report. It was meaningful for those who were there, but it wasn't set up as an encounter between the Indigenous peoples of Canada and the Pope. I think you hear Chief Phil Fontaine saying at the time it was very meaningful, but today saying more needs to be done, right? So we're very conscious of what is being requested and striving to create that space for encounter.
Finally, Archbishop, I'm just going to ask you about something that's happened in BC again this weekend. Another 2 churches were burned down. We're now up to 4 churches that have been burned. What is your reaction to that? The fact that some people are feeling, obviously, frustration against the church to the point where they feel they need to desecrate them.
I understand the anger and I understand the frustration. I hope that spaces for dialogue open up where, instead of outbursts of anger that which are understandable, right? That places for encounter and dialogue and actual being able to address together the calls to action that are addressed to the churches, because those calls to action really open a space for future engagement. They're an invitation to engagement, and I really see them as a way forward. But we can take steps regarding those calls to action on our own, but we really need the engagement of Indigenous peoples with us to take them on. And here in Regina, a lot of that is happening. Our churches here did get anonymous phone calls saying that we were pedophilic satanic cult, not a church, right? We're absorbing some of that. Some churches have had things painted on the outside or statues. In some sense, it's a way of holding the pain and a way of accompanying the pain of this present moment. But there is a path of dialogue and engagement, and there are many, many in the church who are ready for that engagement. So I hope that some of that anger and frustration can be moved, as Chief Cadmus is such an embodiment of a readiness for engagement, right? And our relationship is really built around the calls to action, which is exceedingly helpful.
Archbishop, thank you so much for making the time this morning. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.